In this episode of the Get Invested podcast, I was lucky enough to speak with the inspiring burst of energy that is Dianna Somerville. Di has worn a lot of hats in her career, from corporate strategist to network builder, economic development innovator, innovation culture builder, regional Australia advocate, major event designer, geographical diversity implementer, global ecosystem member, and a community champion, just to name a few. Our conversation was wide-ranging and included plenty of philosophical tangents and anecdotes from Di. We covered her early career and how she invested her time, money and other resources to arrive at where she is today, a leader and advocate for innovation and a better future. As you listen to the full episode, we're going to dive into the conversation and you'll learn a whole bunch of stuff that includes how to make some tough choices, what to do if you've lost or you're losing your professional identity, the dangers of workaholism, why society needs to rethink its perspective on failure, the power of storytelling and showing other people what's possible, how Di has managed to balance career and family pressures, and the benefits of having detractors around you. In particular, I love the way that Di has been able to overcome the challenge of giving up her rapidly advancing career in the Navy to return to her hometown of Wagga and then reinvent herself from scratch to become the founder and driver of the Australia Post Regional Pitch Fest, where she has successfully created a platform to take country initiatives to the world and reinvigorate economic growth in regional Australia. Please enjoy this fascinating conversation with Di Somerville. Before we get into it, if you're a time-poor professional who's interested in investing but don't have the time, you don't have the expertise, you don't know where to start, and you don't know who to trust, then grab a copy of my book, The Freedom Formula, that gives you all of the know-how. You can check it out at www.bushymartin.com.au or email me at hello@khgroup.com.au. That's HELLO@khgroup.com.au and mention Get Invested for a special bonus. I might add that all of the proceeds of the book are going to Living It Rough and Doing It Tough, a really dedicated group who provide for the needs of the homeless and their pets. So please get involved. And now, I hope you enjoy this interview.
The notion of having to save, whether it just be $10 a week, just that notion of saving from the start, that's something I really want to teach the kids.
Welcome to the Get Invested podcast, where we share great conversations with experts from all walks of life to uncover their secret know-how on where they invest their time, their skills and their money, and the benefits that this has created. You see, the truth is that everyone invests. Every minute of every day, we're investing our time, our skills, our energy and our money in something. Some of us are investing consciously, some unconsciously, sometimes for good, sometimes for bad, and sometimes for no impact. Get Invested will help you to start living by design, not by default. I'm going to help you to make it happen, not let it happen. You will hear the top tips on how you can live with conscious intent so that you can live more, work less, and leave a living legacy by investing now. Listen to the show to discover the top tips on how to get started, make the most of your investment journey, and ultimately to be living your dream, not someone else's. More episodes can be found on iTunes or at bushymartin.com.au/get invested. Thanks for listening, and now, let's get invested. Good morning, Di. Absolutely fantastic to have you on Get Invested. How are you going?
Oh, living the dream, Bushy.
Living the dream. Tell me about that. What's living the dream in your part of the world?
Well, look, I don't know whose dream it is, but I think I'm winning. I'm winning in that dream. So, anyway, I'm living. Life's good. It's the start of a new year and a great opportunity to kick some more goals and do some great things. So I'm fresh, I'm pumped, and ready for it.
Awesome. Now, for those that are listening that don't have a massive background on Di, I've had the humbling pleasure to work with Di and support the AusPost Regional Pitch Fest, a national circuit that ran its course right around the country last year. And what a fantastic initiative to really open the opportunity for regional people to innovate and enable. Was a really enjoyable experience for me, Di, and a massive supporter of what you're doing in that area. Tell us about what's happened since then and where's it leading to now?
Look, it was a really good program, Bushy, and I think getting to meet people from right across the country, and particularly regional remote people with great ideas, it kind of spun me out a little as to how much is actually going on that we need to bring to the surface. So I think we just scratched the surface when we did the initial program. So, a lot about where we take this and where we go next will definitely be around going a little bit deeper and continuing to tell those stories, because there's a great startup leader called Jo Burston, and she always says you can't be what you can't see, right?
Yeah, good.
So
Love
for
it.
me, it's continuing on that path of telling the great stories of great regional people with amazing businesses, amazing ideas, but they're doing something about it, right? And they're doing it because technology is allowing them to. So, continuing on that path with Pitchfest, but I guess the underlying message for me is really about growing, accelerating business in regional and rural areas. And that comes in a variety of different, channels for me, Pitchfest being one of them, which, has been absolutely amazing to work with Australia Post and bring that to life. But yeah, definitely got another few things in the pipeline, which are pretty exciting, and just continuing in that vein of trying to motivate people and bring great stories to the surface.
Awesome. Well, look, just to put some context around where you've got to, I'd like to sort of jump right back to the start of your journey, if we could, Di, and just tell us a little bit about how life began for you, and what did you invest your time, your energy, your money, and your skills in to get to where you are today?
Well, I guess I grew up in Wagga in regional New South Wales, and I couldn't wait to get out of the joint. I was like, get me the hell out of here, right?
Yep.
Which is terrible because I live here now and I absolutely love it. But,
Yeah, I know that
so how
feeling.
do you get out of, how do you get out of a regional town? Well, we're landlocked, so I joined the Navy because there's no ocean here, right? So,
You're missing the water, were
they're never
you?
going to send me back. Yeah. They're never going to send me back, right? There's no ocean. They can't, can't drive a warship in Wagga. So ran away and joined the Navy, and that, I guess, was really a big start in terms of my desire to serve and to serve others. And I think that it really built on that, and that's still I still carry that very closely to me,
I bet.
not just in terms of defence, but in terms of serving others. And that, I guess that's a big investment, is that I want to make a difference, I want to help others. So that really started back there in the Defence Force. And look, I had a cracking time in the forces, and people often ask, well, what was it like, especially as a female? And I'm like, it was fantastic. I was very lucky, and I had some amazing commanders and leaders, and learnt some amazing skills, and highly recommend it to anyone not sure about what they're going to do.
Yep.
But then, as I was on my trajectory to be the first female Chief of Navy, which is what I wanted to do,
Wow.
I came back home and went to a little pub in Collingully. Now, Collingully's got about 136 people.
Yep.
And I met a guy called Dane, who's now my husband. So, it really just...
The old heart got in the way of the head, did it, Di?
Oh, it stuffed everything up. Well, I shouldn't say that because I'm very happily married. But yeah, so we did the thing. He's a farmer, so it was either he sells the farm and follows me, or I leave the Navy and move home. So moved on home after a couple of years, and we sort of started our life together on the farm.
Just jumping right in there, I mean that's a major shift, and it must have been pretty challenging for you at the time, because I don't know a lot about the forces, but there's a very clear career path. There's a hierarchy, a structure, the leadership skills that you get, that working with people in all different areas. I can see that being a very exciting place to learn some fantastic skills that obviously you've probably put you in very good stead for what you're doing now. To make that call and make the jump back to a life on the farm. Talk me through how you felt about that and how you came to grips with it.
Oh, look, I thought it was going to be like McLeod's Daughters, right? So it was going to be so romantic, and it was going to be great. And I wasn't going to work. We were going to have kids, and I really was very young and naive, I think. And really, we were second year into a 10-year drought. So
wow.
The reality of that was very different. And Look, I knew also that I wanted to have kids, and
Yeah.
I wanted to, raise them in a place where, they had more than 4 by 4 meters of fake grass to run around on. So, bringing them up in the country was really important. But,
Yeah. Yeah.
financially, that was a really tough period. And I had to go back to work to support the farm,
Yeah.
which is fine. But I couldn't get a job.
Right.
So here I am, university qualified, ex-Navy officer, come back home trying to get a job and could not get a job to save myself. And it was harrowing. It was
Yeah.
demoralizing.
Yeah.
And I did struggle mentally really badly with that because I talk about it that I had a real loss of professional identity.
Yes. Of course.
So
How did
yeah,
you work through that? Because a lot of people go through the same thing. I mean, whether you're working for someone else or whether you're trying to eke out an existence. And let's face it, farming is really tough these days. It's if the weather doesn't get you, the government or the overseas markets do. So it's you just can't seem to take a break, and the mental pressure and the flow on from that is I don't think people appreciate and realise just how tough that can be. What did you do that got you through that time? What was your thinking? What were the things that what the support network around you? What was it that actually helped you to survive that pretty challenging period?
well, yeah, well, I'm very blessed to have great family, and my family definitely rallied around me, and I think we're kind of waiting for it to happen, having known what I'd achieved
Okay.
young in the forces. They kind of, and then they saw me move back, and they're kind of like, this is maybe not going to go so well for a while. And it took probably a good 8 years, Bushy, to really pull myself out of it. It's not something that you can do overnight. I think the first piece is the acceptance.
Yeah.
I ended up going and selling Tupperware.
Wow. How did that go?
Used to drive a warship, now sell Tupperware. Like it was, but it was such, and because I needed the money, but it was such a good thing for me to do because it taught me humility.
Yes.
And it taught me the value of a job and not to have an expectation, but to work towards. So I think that it was hard at the time, but in hindsight, it was a really important step because I had to learn how to start at the bottom again, and that it was okay to start there again and work your way up. And I got back into defence as a public servant, so that really did help. And then I think it probably took a couple of years then for me to get some sort of professional satisfaction in what I was doing.
Right.
So there was a long period there where I didn't, and I had kids in that period, which puts another layer on top of all of it.
Of course.
But I always felt that there was something more I could do or I could give. And, I guess we kind of got through the drought. We got to a point where, I was on a good wage by then working for defence. But
so you were working for defence in Wagga or in the area?
Yeah, well, sort of in the area. So I spent a lot of time between Wagga and Canberra.
Right.
Worked on the national contract transition team. Base services contract. So had this contract sort of head on me and, still had that foot in the door with defence. So I could speak the defence language.
Of course.
And did a lot of project management and that sort of stuff. So it was great. It was exciting, but I got really frustrated at, I wanted to stay locally. I couldn't move and I couldn't get promoted any further. So, the ceiling, everyone talks about the glass ceiling. I talk about the geographical ceiling.
Yes.
Right?
Good call.
So it was like, okay, well, I can't go any further. So what do I do? And then I just started looking outside, and I'd never considered looking outside. And I think that's what really, when I saw the opportunity, it was really about, well, I started with grant writing and tender writing for people because I had that contract knowledge. So, and I was lucky because I built myself up to the point where I could have 12 months leave without pay.
Nice.
And have a runway where I could give it a go with a safety net, knowing that I could go back. So I was very, very fortunate in that circumstance.
I don't know whether it's fortunate, but by design again, that you strike me as someone who's quite goal orientated, and then works backwards to what do I need to do now to make that happen, and that's a skill set all of its own, which not many people are born with or actually grow over time. So again, whether that's something that's inherent in you or whether you picked up through your defence training, just a sensational outlook on life, really.
Well, but it's not all roses and beer and Skittles. Like, No, and I think, that first part, like the first career was awesome, the Navy. The second career, which was scrounging and searching, and finding place and reason,
Yeah.
um, was a really tough period. But it's allowed me to get to a point where I'm at now, and you can't expect to arrive at a point without having all of that support or lessons or emotions and everything to find your place in the world. And I'm still searching, like it's never ending.
No,
But you know,
agreed.
I
Yeah,
see this as the third installment, and I know there'll be a fourth and a fifth.
of
So
course.
I'm much more comfortable with that, because I think we've gone to the days of having one career and getting a gold watch at the end. Like, you've got to be agile. You've got to be able to move and adjust, and I think it's just so exciting too.
Absolutely exciting. And I think that flexibility and adaptability is a mark of uh, people who are comfortable with themselves, because you've been through the desert. Really, you've been through
Yeah,
the 40 years of famine to get in touch with who you are as a person, and
gone
then
from that one.
well, yeah. But I think the resilience that comes out of that. I mean, listening to what you're saying, I've been on a similar path. I spent many years as an architect, and then burnt my family because I was never there. I was working 7 days a week, 14 hours a day, and turned around and they weren't there anymore, and that was very challenging for me. That, I was one of these country boys that was brought up. You're going to get married, have kids, build a career, and then retire on your super at the end, and had that really strong country work ethic where it was the old-fashioned. The bloke goes and earns the coin, and the wife looks after the house. That's how I was brought up. It was very much that sort of
Yeah,
routine, and that just doesn't work
yeah,
anymore. And
no,
that was a very bitter lesson for me, and really uh, made me reflect internally to look at, well, what do I need to change? What do I need to do differently? What do I need to come to terms with in myself to be able to learn from? I'd consider that a pretty major mistake, and then move forward with that. It sounds like you
yeah,
went sort of met your own demons along that similar
yes,
journey. The and I think adversity is what brings out the best in us. For those of us who are able to learn from those challenging circumstances, it just makes us better as people. What's your feeling
it
around that?
does. It does. And like in the startup world, like the notion is fail fast and fail often, because
Yes,
that whole nature of failure in Australia, it's this terrible word, and oh my gosh, if you fail at something, then you swept to the bottom of the pile. And we really need to change that way of thinking culturally, that it's okay to fail, and the best piece of it is it gives you the best lessons to learn and grow from. So I think if we can instill a culture of, oh yeah, like I stuffed up, but you know what, I'm getting back on the horse, and I'm getting back on the horse with an extra bag of tools in able to use wherever I can, and great lessons. So I think it's hard for anyone, and for anyone that's out there that's listening, like, you're not alone. And that's probably one of the best things that I've found. I'm very open in talking about my experiences, and I find the more I talk about it, the more I realise there's so many other people out there that have experienced it. Like,
yes,
it's very, very common, but I think, don't think that that's the end of your career or whatever it is. There's another page to turn and another chapter to write, and
absolutely.
you're the only one that can do that. So,
Yeah,
for me, yeah, like I felt like I came out of the wilderness, and getting out, like, you got to think, I worked public sector pretty much my whole life,
yep.
and then I got out and I started a business on my own. And like, it was like this cap had been lifted off my head, and I could innovate, and no one was going to tell me no. It doesn't, fall into
Yes,
the legislation or the, whatever it
yes.
was. And
The QA manual.
so it was
Yep.
like I'd had this like suppressed creativity, philanthropic nature, that just was unleashed when I stepped out. And I think sometimes you've got to be brave enough to step out
Yep.
to see what you're missing out on. So,
Yep.
I had no idea though. Like, I was brought up in a small business family, and we, we spoke a lot about business, and it was very much the world that I lived in. But public sector to running your own business, I sat around the farm table for 6 months having no idea what I was doing. But, I was sure I was, getting somewhere. So you've got to start.
Yeah, well, the courage that I'm hearing coming through, you're prepared to have a crack. And most people get in that comfort zone of, well, I'm a bit scared of what's around the corner. I'll just sit here and it's not that good. It's okay. It's not that good, but I'm too fearful to make the break. What is it you think that we can do to be making people more comfortable to have the courage to jump and build the wings as they learn to fly?
Because it's definitely that. It's assemble the plane on the parachute on the way down. But I think that really it's that for me, it's the storytelling. It's allowing people to see other people doing this, and that's really what the Pitch Fest was about. And I think too that as we progress as an ecosystem, when I talk in startup terms, where it's becoming more and more evident for people, but there's more and more avenues to enter into that pipeline, right? So we call it side hustle, right? You've got your side hustle. You've got something that you're working on the side. So you can have your 9 to 5 and you've got your security and you're paying your bills and you're not entirely happy, but it's a sustainability piece there. But on the side, you've got your side hustle and it's the passion piece. It's finding what you're really passionate about and then trying to look at how there's problems around that and you're going to solve the problem around that. And then you have things like there's incubator courses. There's, so many startup courses now that you can go and work out of hours, a couple of hours a week and sort of chip away at your side hustle. And then you'll learn really quickly whether this is something you want to pursue or not. And I think, we're making it easier for people to do that through these sort of programs. And whereas they didn't exist before, you had your job and then you went home, you had family and you had life and that was it. Like there was no such thing as a side hustle.
No.
And there was definitely no avenue unless you sort of did it through a TAFE or a business enterprise centre or something like that, but they weren't geared up to do what we do now. So I think the culturally we're changing to be much more open to people doing things on the side. And we have programs and support there to help people do this stuff on the side to get it up. And I think once you dip your toe in, you'll know whether this is something you want to do. And, I run an incubator and we're 4th cohort in. And every new cohort it's funny to watch their progression. At the start, they're very tentative. They're like, I've just got this idea. I don't know, blah, 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 blah. And they get to the end of it and you can tell the ones that are going to make it because they're full of passion about their idea.
Okay, I was going to say, what separates those that are going to make it from those that don't? What do you see?
Passion's probably number one.
Right.
Passion. Like they've got to have the passion. But the other thing is the problem they're trying to solve.
Right.
Like a lot of people will go, oh, this is really important to me, so I'm going to do something about it. It's like, well, that's just you. And if
no one else
the
cares.
problem you're solving isn't relevant to a market, then what's the point, But passion has a lot to do with it. And I'm very much a people person, so I always look to that person and go, have they got the passion? Have they got the nous? Have they got the hustle? Like, are they willing to put the hard yards in and make this happen? So those sort of things are really important, but they're things that will come naturally to you if if you're passionate about what you do.
Yeah, I'd love that. I really love what you're saying there. The side hustle is a brilliant way of because what we do is in a parallel to what you're talking about there, Di. Because what we say to people who are interested in property that don't know where to start, don't have the time, don't have the expertise, and don't know who to trust, is okay. Well, let's treat this as a side hustle. I haven't used that expression, but I'm going to start using it now. Thanks, Di. So you better copyright that one.
It's not mine. So.
Because a side hustle is a great way to describe it. Because what I often say to people is, a lot of us try and make everything happen through our work, and we've got to enjoy our work, and it's got to create our income, and it's got to create our wealth. Well, I guess through bitter experience, I've found that quite often that's just you can't do it all through the one vehicle. So what my wife and I have done in that regard is very much what you've said. We generated income initially that we then sidelined into property, and I've always had a passion for property. I mean, as an architect, I was always a sickly, asthmatic country kid designing homes while I was sitting in bed. That's pretty much how I grew up. So that passion there has been very strong, and it is a key ingredient of the whole mix. But again, coming back to that courage to be able to do something in parallel with what you're doing and make the time is whether it be property or whether it be the new business that or an app or whatever it is that we're looking at. The thing I constantly encourage people to do is not just focus on the one track, to actually use that track to help create another that then allows you to leapfrog and make other things happen, and to test it. It may not work, and it doesn't matter if it doesn't work. And coming back to what you said before around making failure an acceptable and an expected part of life is a really big step for most Aussies, because we put enormous pressure on ourselves. You know, the old "she'll be right, mate" thing is good, but I think we have become a nation where we're expected to be perfect 100% of the time. And I'll be interested in your thoughts around how are we going to change that culture, because you're obviously doing it with what you're doing through the incubators and whatnot there in Wagga, and getting people to accept that failure is a normal part of life, and the steps you need to go through to get to success, and however you describe it. How do you think we are going to inculcate that change? Di, what are you doing that's working in that regard?
Well, I think a lot of it's about, like, cultural change can only come from I guess, an uprising within the community. And to me, it's getting the community on board and a level of understanding. I think there's a big, well, not in terms of property, but definitely in terms of startups, which is, where I live and breathe, is that there's a real education gap. So you've got the believers, the people that get it, the people that have seen success with it, and then you get the people who are sitting on the outside that really don't get it and really don't understand. And, I think it's filling that education gap so that everyone in the community is aware, but you don't just go out and just, blast it through the networks. You've got to bring people in and bring them into a safe, nurturing environment. And I think when you can do that with some strong leaders over a period of time, I mean, this stuff doesn't happen overnight. Like, I look at my mentor Simone, who lives here in Wagga, and she's been at it for 6.5 years. It doesn't happen quickly. But what we're seeing now is the tides are beginning to turn. Government's starting to understand. The general public now a little bit more interested because they've seen a lot of it in media or whatever it is. They're starting to accept that this is actually okay. And I mean, you see the same with investment, like in terms of investment of financial means. Like, a lot more people are taking a bit more notice of their super. They're taking more notice of their long-term financial goals. And I think this next generation are going to be far better at looking to how they're going to do that. And it's I think the openness of the internet, the access to information, but people are willing to talk about this stuff now. So, there's lots that I'm doing in the startup space that's trying to help that, not just in Wagga, but across the whole nation. But collectively, we've got to be very conscious of rising together. And I guess that's something I've just returned from the States from a trip over there, and I spent a fair bit of time in Silicon Valley and San Francisco, and I really saw a huge divide between the really wealthy and the really poor. And the gap just appears to be growing. And I think, and a lot of that's due to, like, the extreme success of some startups in the valley, and the cost of living is just exuberant. Like, why people do that and they work these ridiculous hours just does my head in. But we've got to be conscious in Australia that we don't want to be that. We want to have everyone rise together, because when we rise together, everyone is far more successful. So I think that was a really cool takeaway from that trip. I don't know if that answered your question at all, but anyway, that's Di. I just babble on.
No, that was some really good insights in that, and I think the other thing that you just sparked a thought from talking about the trip to the US, and having spent some time myself there. We actually own some property in the States, and we spent a bit of time over there. And the thing that we tend to forget is just how bloody good we've got it here in Oz. And I'm a country boy. I was born in a tiny little 2-horse town called Goroka in Western Victoria. I've moved around with my folks. My old man became a stock agent with Dowgetties for many years, so we're always in rural communities helping them
yards.
work. Yeah, you got it. I spent all my holidays in the cattle yards and the sheep yards pushing cattle and sheep, and loved it, by the way. I love the smell of sale yards now because it takes me straight back to the to that exercise, the old shit on your shoes routine. I know it sounds a bit scary, but there's something very familiar, and it takes me back to a pretty good upbringing because I was lucky enough to live in a town where, and I'm sure Wagga was the same, but we never locked the cars. Yeah. The key was always in the ignition. Our neighbourhood was the whole district because no one cared. It was a really safe place and an awesome place to grow up. And I think because I'm one of those that's a bit like yourself, couldn't wait to get out of the small town, went to uni and then followed architecture around the globe, actually worked all over the place, but realised later on just how good life in the country was. And now I'm back there. So we live on a farm in the hills south of Adelaide, beautiful part of the world, and we've now got the benefit of all of the stuff that the country brings, but the technology like you and I are using right now enables me to talk to people anywhere, anytime, and do anything. So it's a pretty exciting time to be alive.
It's an amazing opportunity for our regions, and I think regional areas are beginning to see this happen. And like when we did Pitch Fest, I did this quote at the start of every single Pitch Fest event, and it's a quote by Brendan Yell. And it's that tech has trumped the tyranny of distance, and place no longer matters.
Brilliant.
Right? So what that means is you can be a regional business, you can start your business, I don't know, in Narracor, and your first customer can be in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
You know, that's the power of the internet, right? It's the power of e-commerce. And I think our regions are beginning to go, wait a minute, you know, we've got an opportunity here, because you're seeing this massive influx of people moving back to the regions, right? Yes. They want to bring their kids up in that regional environment. They can't afford a house in Sydney or Melbourne or Brisbane. Like, they have to get out.
Yeah.
But they're coming back and they're starting their businesses back here because it's a really safe environment to do it in. You've got low overheads. Your cost of lease is far less.
Exactly.
Your inputs, you can afford to buy your house outright with, like it's just such a different environment. And I think we're beginning to see a few stories filter through media and a bit of chatter about this, whole return to the regions piece, and as people look to get outside the city, like I did a post just yesterday on density, like why are we concentrating on building more and more and more in one place when we've got the technology now to be connected anywhere in the world? You don't have to you don't have to be there. Like look at what's happened in Boulder in the States. Like that's a group of guys that and girls that were in the startup scene in the valley, and just said, you know what, we don't really want to live in the valley. We love snow skiing. Let's move to Boulder and we'll start something there. And now you've got probably the second largest ecosystem in America, in Boulder, in Colorado. So, it doesn't matter as much as I think it has in the past. And I think the important thing for people in regional areas is, okay, you've got your job, but if you've got that idea, now is the time to do something about it, because it's really, growing, but not just an idea in terms of startup, but your businesses as well. And I've got some great friends with great stories that have moved back to the region, started their business, kept their clients in Sydney, and are just kicking it out of the park.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what we do. We most of my clients are city-based, metropolitan, but we live. I can't see a neighbour from where we live. A house on the top of the hill, looking down the valley, and it's just a fantastic way to live. And I wake up in the morning and feel like I've been kissed on the bum dive, because kookaburras, the dogs, you know what it's like. You probably do exactly the same. It's just bloody awesome.
I go for a walk in the morning with the dogs on the farm, and it's beautiful. But, I think a lot of people, I don't know what the misconception is. I just can't understand what the hell is going on in their heads and why do they think living in the city is any better. Like,
yeah, I'm with you.
We do have running water, electricity now, so we're really moving forward. And that's another thing that really frustrates me is a lot of people from the city will be going, oh, we better get out to the regions and we better help them. Well, I think now it's getting a point that I think we need to help them. I
Yeah.
think we need to help them see the opportunity that, you know, why are you doing this, you idiots?
Yeah.
Like, you sit in traffic for hours on end.
Oh.
Like, it just
Can you
does my
imagine?
head in. But,
I can't
you know,
even
and a
imagine.
lot of people, sorry.
Yeah, go on. Sorry. Yep.
Yeah, just a lot of people will say, oh, but there's no jobs in the regions. Well, that, you know, to me, that's BS. Create your own job, you know? Like,
what do they call a job? Just
and
over
I
broke. A job's just over broke. So this is where, if we come back to that courage that you spoke about, we talk about the mindset of what I love about country people, that I see a massive difference between country people and those that have been brought up in a more metropolitan suburban environment, is that our patience and persistence muscles are actually pretty developed. And as we all know, anything that grows successfully, if we want, let's take an orchard. Let's say we're going to grow some fruit. Well, we plant it today. We've got to nurture, cultivate, de-weed, take it through the hot summers, the cold winters, and if we're lucky, we're going to get a good crop out of it, maybe 10, 15, more likely 20 years. So we are used to, our expectation around time, I think, is that we treat time as our friend, not as the enemy, because our expectations are right, because we expect that success in that format is going to take that period of time, and therefore we go in with the right mindset, because we expect that success comes from patience, persistence, and continuing to do the things, knowing that eventually the results will come, versus the unfortunate those that are brought up with the instant iPhone everything, where everything's at the fingertips, and therefore there is no patience, there is no persistence, and the expectation that I'm going to plant a seed tomorrow and I'm going to eat the fruit tomorrow is something that I think, as you say, those in the regions have got a lot to communicate to those that have misconceptions around expectations in the more suburban environments. What's your thoughts around that?
Yeah, look, I agree to a certain extent, but I also think it's not just a metro and a regional piece in terms of patience and expectation. I think that's probably more a generational thing.
Yeah, good call. Yep.
And I think they that generationally there's an expectation that it's here and it's now, but that is the world that we're going to live in, but it doesn't take away from a need that for some things that doesn't apply. You know, like I think it's that education piece as to what that can apply to, because with that comes great opportunity, right?
Yes,
so you know, because people want it, they want it now. So you know, you create something that allows people to get it now. Well, you know, you're going to do well out of that. Look at Amazon, like, geez.
Sure.
But
mind you, Amazon's been a long time in the making too, Di. That there was a
shit, yeah. Like, it's years and years and years of this stuff.
Long time.
But I think also though, like when you talk more about financial, but also like investing of your own time, like if that's something, like I look at what I'm trying to achieve, I'm probably 3 years into probably like a 20-year plan in terms of investment of my time and energy into something I'm passionate about, but I'm not going to really reap the benefits as far as from a satisfaction point of view for a long time yet.
Sure.
But my financial goals have to be long term as well. So you know, they've got to match that, but I still have an expectation that if I want something, I do want it now. But I think that's just probably my age, and yeah. But I think, you know, to touch back on that piece of what regional people have to offer, I think, you know, their intuition, their ability to adapt and overcome, their ability to just get on with it are all such positive things. We're innovators by nature. But something that we really need to work on as a collective group is the dialogue, because if we're telling these stories back into the city of, you know, woe is us, it's so hard on the land, and you know, it's so terrible, and you know, that negative talk that we talk about, we're so hard done by, you know, I think we've got to flip it. We've got to be talking about what's great about our regions, and you know, what's exciting, and put a positive layer over what we do and live together in that way, because you know, no one in the city wants to hear a whinging, you know, regional person go on about how unlucky they are.
Absolutely,
you know, and the difference now is that we can create our own things where we are and not have that reliance as much as we used to have on the cities.
Yeah, no, very good call. Awesome call. Hey, I just picking up on something you mentioned around your long-term plan. What are they, and what does it look like, and what are you going to invest in terms of your time, energy, money and skills to get from where you are now to where you want to be? Just talk us through that.
You want to know what's really funny is my team sitting at the computers around me and they're actually laughing because I think they want to know the same thing, right?
All right, pray tell.
It does sort of change every day, but yeah. Look, I think long term, Bushy, for me, it's about ensuring our regions have a future, a sustainable future, and that that my kids and my kids' kids, if they want to choose to stay in the region, that they're going to have a really prosperous and sort of really enjoyable life, that they don't feel the need that they have to go, or if they do go, which is great, they have the opportunity to come back. So for me, it's about making our regions in Australia and in the rural areas as much as the regional and remote areas really strong, vibrant communities. So that's my end game there as far as what I'm doing and what I'm driving to get there. Things like Pitch Fest is a step, the Agri Hacks a step. I'm doing a conference this year, 8.8, which is a regional innovation and small business conference. So, there's lots of little things that I'm doing in that piece to try and help build the education in the first sense. So it's about closing the gap, particularly with councils, business chambers, all those feeder agencies and what their role and part is, but also what the opportunity is for them to build new businesses within their community through the startup scene. So, so that's sort of like the first step. I think then the second step will be the implementation of it into these communities and helping these communities grow and build further. And then to that point where we have these great satellite towns that are hubs of activity and opportunity, sort of 20 years from now. And I think from a sustainability point of view, we're going to have to, because our cities just can't continue to go the way they do unless we want to end up like San Francisco, which we don't.
No way.
So that's sort of that plan. And I have a real interest in politics and having a voice. So that's probably maybe somewhere where I'll end up. But, who knows? I've got to behave myself.
Heaven forbid. Heaven forbid. I've been there. It's ugly. Get out.
Well, I haven't dipped my toe in yet.
So, you've got too much positive passion to be compromised by the political environment. But I'm a little bit jaundiced because I spent a lot of time in the Northern Territory and got very heavily involved in the political environment and didn't like what I see. Actually, there's particularly the big party stuff is pretty ugly. But that's for another time.
Yeah. I think it's a long-term piece, and again, I think it really ties back to my desire to serve, which has sort of been in everything I do. And but look, I'll continue to be and putting my time and energy into telling stories, into helping others rise. But I guess the core part to make my business sustainable as well, like you've got to put food on the table and you've got to build for the future, right? And I've built a few products now that have allowed me the time and the space and I guess that the opportunity to really invest in other things now. So the hard yards are beginning to pay off. But, my real piece will be around helping communities build from within. So going into communities and helping them bring all the players together and really lifting, with councils, working with business chambers. Like business chambers today, they concentrate on the shops that are on the street. They don't see all the shops that exist online.
Yes.
And it's about educating them and saying, okay, there's a whole workforce of people out there in your community, and you've got to help them lift, and you've got to be aware of them. You've got to be supporting them as much as the shop owners. So
totally agree.
That's sort of where my head's at. I think there's I'll never say no to too much. I think there's opportunity will always present itself at the right time, and we'll see what happens with Australia Post, with the Pitch Fest, and I think that the connections I've been able to make over the last 12 months and meeting amazing people like yourself, Bushy, like I think the opportunity will present itself, and I've got myself to a position where I can jump at that opportunity if I want to, and I've got a great great group of people around me, great staff that allow me the freedom to go and do those things. But that just hasn't happened overnight. That's a long-term investment
Yeah,
into
yeah,
the right people, into the right processes in my business,
yeah.
and that sort of stuff's important to get you to that point.
Totally agree. And full admiration for what you're doing there. I love your passion and the fact that you do allow the world to bring opportunity to you, because I think you become a magnet if you're emanating that sort of energy level that actually, without getting woo-woo, it does attract people of a similar ilk that see the positive side of where that can all lead, and the synergies that come from collaborating with others is just, as you know, the partnerships you built very quickly have been absolutely awesome. So, hey, but let's bring it back to a personal level, because I mentioned before that I stuffed it up the first time because I worked too hard and burnt the family. You must have some challenges there, because you travel a fair bit. You're very clearly very dedicated to what you do. That requires a pretty strong supporting partner, and obviously Dane's working pretty hard on the farm, I'm guessing, if he's into
He's
crops
a
and cattle.
bloody legend.
Yeah, there you
Well,
go.
he's
There
a
you go.
legend.
Talk to me about that, because there's not a lot of
Yeah.
relationships that survive that sort of pressure. So how does it work for you at that level?
There hasn't been beer and skittles in that either. Like, that's marriage, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And I
totally.
mean, we were really young too, and we've got two kids. So Judd's 10 and Lace's 8, and they require a lot of attention, and they really are at the middle of everything that Dane and I do. We do everything really for them. Dane's working the farm to provide for a future for the kids, and I'm doing the same to provide for a community for the future for the kids.
Yeah,
So
brilliant.
so everything really in that sense is joy. And I think Dane and I are extremely different people.
Yeah,
We're very individual
yeah,
within our marriage, which I find like we love doing stuff together, but we're very happy for the other to go off and do whatever it is that they want
great,
to go do. And
awesome.
I think that comes from trust.
Yeah, yeah,
But also too, like it may just be our natures that we don't need to live out of each other's pockets, and we'd actually prefer not to.
yeah,
But it hasn't always been like that. I think for a lot of years I did all of it as far as the kids and working, and I didn't do as much travel in defence as a public servant, but there was enough, and we had nannies live in
yeah,
and all that sort of stuff. And
yeah.
then it sort of got to that point where I was ready to jump out on my own. And I'll never forget this conversation at the farm table. And I wish I bloody recorded it, because I don't think I'll ever hear him say it again. But he leant across the table and he goes, "You know what? You've given so much up for the farm. You gave up the Navy. You've given up, with everything with the kids." He said, "This is your turn." And it's
Awesome.
not like I felt I needed his approval or his, anything like that. But it was the kicker I needed to lose the guilt I have and I put on myself. And that's
Yes.
very much a mother's guilt that
Yeah.
we do to ourselves.
Totally.
And yeah, so it's not that anyone puts that on us. Often we put it heavily on ourselves.
Totally
And
agree.
what that allowed me to do was to go, you know what? I can. And
Awesome.
that then it unclipped my wings and I was gone. And I think Dane's like, he doesn't understand what I do. He thinks I train unicorns. That's what he tells everyone.
Love it.
I don't produce anything, right? I don't physically, tangibly have something that I can go to a shop and sell. Like, and he's like, I don't get it. I don't get what you do, but anyway.
You
But
build
I think
spirit.
he sees.
You build spirit, which creates
He,
community. That's what you do.
but yeah, I do. But it's not physical. You can't see it. You can't touch it. You can't. And yeah. But anyway, I think he enjoys seeing me so happy and so passionate and so driven that sustains him. He sort of thinks, well, she's off, she's doing that, and I'm like, I'll make a good living out of what I do.
Yep. So you should.
And he is more than happy being on the farm, and as long as I don't book anything on a Tuesday night when the darts comp's on, we're all good.
Yeah, I'm a mad field hockey player, so my whole winter existence revolves around playing hockey on Saturday. And my good wife Sonia knows that any social event or any business or any other activity is off the table when it comes to hockey. So I get it, darts and hockey.
You have a look at how many events at Pitch Fest. Like, we did 56 events last year. How many of those were on a Tuesday night?
Yeah.
Not many.
I love it. Yeah, that's brilliant because I think that's important to share, Di, because I think people forget that there's too much focus globally, really, on the individual, and at the end of the day, I know myself that without my good wife Sonia, I wouldn't be enjoying the lifestyle or the success that we have enjoyed and continue to enjoy. And it's the recognition of the differences. Sonia and I are very different people as well. It's a real yin and yang. It's I'm the peacock. She makes it happen quietly behind the scenes.
No,
you hadn't
not
realised
you.
that, had you? No. But it works brilliantly, and it's that recognition of each other's strengths and weaknesses, and as you say, giving each other the freedom to fly, knowing that that's actually going to be to the betterment of the relationship and the family long term is fantastic, and absolutely applaud that. And I think that if you're both on the same journey and recognise that you've got different paths to trod along that journey, then that's half the battle. And I just think that the partnership part of it is a really important part of what you're talking about in relation to regional people growing their business opportunities through entrepreneurship. And it's no different in property. What we often see in the property scene, for example, is that one of the partners will create the income while the other partner builds the wealth through property, and it needs both of those to be doing that to actually make that successful. So
that's it, and that's what the farm is for us, Bushy.
Yeah,
like it's
of
the
course.
centerpiece. Like it's the thing that's a long-term investment, because
It
the financial gain of the farm is not in what we get every year. The financial gain is the value of the land over time, and
exactly.
That's our big play.
Here's your nest egg.
And as far as the sustainability piece for the future, like that's a really important key part of it, and Dane's got to be there to do that, and I've got to be able to provide an income off farm to do that. So there definitely is. But I did want to touch on too that it's not just your partner in life that's the important piece to success. And I think I've been really, really fortunate to have a great tribe around me of supporters. And look, there's dream squashers out there, and they're important too, because you just get this great motivation to prove them wrong. And I do that. I do like to do that a bit. But so I talk about my mentor Simone, and she has been phenomenal. She's what I call a cheerleader in life. She's on the sideline. She's like, "Go, Di, you're awesome," and then it all turns to shit, and she's like, "Go, Di, it's okay." So those people are really important to have in your life. And I think surrounding yourself with positive people that understand the journey you're on and are willing to support you along the way, it's just as vital as anything in terms of success. So, yes, having support from your life partner is important, but it's also important to have a tribe of believers, or believers,
totally agree.
if you're into
and
that.
Swimming in a pond of people who believe the same. It's the old Simon Sinek story of be with people who believe what you believe, and amazing things can happen. And again, what I admire about yourself is you make it crystal clear what you're about, and that by virtue of doing that, people are attracted to it. So you say you're lucky. I don't say you're lucky. I think you've worked bloody hard to be able to attract the sort of people that you need around you to make it happen, because they have a lot of faith, and you give them hope, which fuels passion, which actually then achieves results. So that flame that you produce is a big part of attracting that team. The team hasn't happened by luck. It's happened by people going, I love what Di's doing. I want to be part of that. I'm going to help her make that happen.
Oh, thank you. I'll pay you later.
Hey, just before we talk about where to next, if we reflect on your journey so far, Di, and if you were talking to your younger self when you just finished high school, what would you say to young Di, and what would, in terms of where she should invest her time, energy, income and money and skills, and what would you, if anything, do differently than what you've done to date?
Sure. So I guess, I was really lucky to go to university and get paid to go to university through defence. No HECS bill,
brilliant,
on a wage. But I didn't do. I pissed it up the wall. You do that when you're 18. Right?
Of course you do.
a nice SS Commodore Ute, and I thought I was pretty hot shit. But
Did you have the foxtails?
Sorry?
Did you have the foxtails and the rhubarb on the front?
No, I didn't have that fast. I was classy. I had some B&S stickers, but I was classy. No, but I think, you know, from a young self, I think, you know, I really should have saved more from, you know, having a culture then of saving, of putting money aside. And, you know, I think from the start, if I'd done that, you know, could have financially been in a very different position now because I was on a good income. So the notion of having to save, whether it just be $10 a week, like just that notion of saving from the start, you know, that's something I really want to teach the kids. So that's probably the first piece that I'd look to, that sort of career that I had with defence in uniform and out of uniform, and I've used that opportunity a lot more to build a little bit of a safety net or something for whatever the next thing was, you know. Okay. I think I didn't know that there was going to be a next thing, you know. I just thought, oh, this is my life and I'll just keep plodding away, and defence is great. But I should have used that opportunity in a better way. I think too, like I guess one sort of thing that I wish I did do that I didn't do is I didn't deploy when I was in the Navy. I had a chance to, and I didn't. And that's something I think I'll always, you know, be a little, I don't know, not regretful, but, you know, it's something I wish I actually did, was do some actual active service. Because you do all that training and to never put it into practice, it's, you know, and then also to really serve, to have done it like fully fledged, and but, you know, and also the financial benefits, like, hello, like you know, you health card for life, you know, there's great benefits that if I'd just done that one tour, it would have set me up long term. But I think when you're young, you're just not thinking on that big picture, and
of course,
and that's, you know, that's the beauty of hindsight, isn't it? Like, you know,
it is.
I think also too is you know, and we're in the same position at the moment. It feels like we're still fighting to get somewhere financially, and but I think if I can accept that sooner rather than later, that's just life, that you are on a journey and you are constantly, and, you know, that whole, what you were talking about, the expectation that it comes tomorrow, like getting more comfortable with that notion for my long-term financial employment is probably, you know, that. So I'll probably spend a few more years in the military. I probably, you know, I don't think there's much else. I think, you know, I'd probably choose not to go through a drought again if I could, because that was shit.
I bet.
You know, look, those sort of things. And really, though, if I'd done anything too differently, I wouldn't have sort of the mixed match of skill sets that I have now, that I draw on for all different things. So, you know, that sort of piece. I think I wish I jumped out earlier and started my own thing earlier. I think, you know, that fear and but also too, like for the first 6-12 months, like I was so scared to make a decision because I was so used to someone telling me what the decision needed to be.
Yeah, of course.
You know, so hierarchical. And I think had I come out and gone, right, Di, you're the boss. You know, you make the decisions and you run with it. And it took a long time to get comfortable with that. Sure. So I think if you could shorten that time frame, like you probably would achieve a lot more, a lot quicker. So, you know, but, you know, there's if I hadn't done things the way I'd done them, I wouldn't have held an event in Wagga, and Australia Post wouldn't have been in the audience, and I wouldn't have had that great opportunity. So things happen for a reason.
Totally agree. And and that belief there is one that and not a lot of people have either. It's accepting that, well, this is leading to something else. I don't know what it is yet, but I have the faith that it's going to take me in the right direction. So that is awesome.
Well, here's hoping.
Yeah, I have no doubt, Di. I have no doubt. So be right behind you 100% there. One quick one, if you again just looking back over the past, what's been your best investment to date? And as I say, that can be investment in time, skills, money, you name it. What would you say has been your best investment?
In myself.
Yeah.
And I think that's I don't want that to sound really narcissistic or anything, but just a belief in myself and an investment into an acceptance of what I can be without, you know, the fear of tall poppy syndrome, the fear those sort of things in
Yeah.
that the building of my brand, the building of who I am and where I want to go, and the taking the time to give myself the space to think about that. Like,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
I've just come back from the States and my head's like spinning, and I've already told the girls about 15 new things that I want to do, and I think they're picking up. But, you know, I need to give myself now some space and invest in myself to know what I've got to do next. So
Good
I
call.
think that taking time out and allowing yourself time to assess, to check in on yourself,
So true.
you know, that's probably, you know, other than my kids and my husband, probably the best investment I've made
Yeah.
in terms of being resilient and being strong to take whatever comes next. So
Yeah, love it.
without, you know, but financially it's probably the farm, you know.
Yes.
You know, now we've taken the big leap and we've bought the next block of land and we're to the eyeballs in debt, but it's a good investment because it centers us and it's something for the future that, you know, now we have to be patient because we're not going to pay it off tomorrow, unfortunately, unless you could help us out with that. That would
I
be
can
great,
definitely help you with that, but that's a chat for another time. The one thing that I do want to just zero in on what you said there, and again, it's something that not many of us make the time to do, and it's something that I probably take for granted, and it's what I call living by design, and that is every year taking some time out to reposition and refocus, and without the noise that everyday life gets in the road, reflecting on where am I now, where do I want to be, what do I need to be doing differently now, given the massive opportunity. We're so crowded with the noise of opportunity in this world that it's very easy as an entrepreneur in particular to get distracted and chase the next shiny thing. But what I love about what you're saying, Di, and is something that we try and inculcate in the people that we help along this journey, is that regular reflection exercise to get clear around your vision, to reflect on, well, where are we now? And the real benefits of that living by design, not by default, is that, one, it gives you a magnet to focus your passion, and it keeps you on that journey. So if you've got clarity around what that looks like, then you're not likely to get distracted, because it also provides a compass, because each and every opportunity that gets thrown your way, if it's not taking you closer to where you want to be, then it's a lot easier to say no. And
completely agree.
Yeah, and it's something that not many people talk about, Di. So that you're saying, well, I need to make the time to now to reflect on what the next step is. I absolutely encourage you to make that time and take the time out. Take 4 days out and put a line through it.
4? Wow, do you guys hear that?
I reckon you need 4 days. 4 days every year is what we do, and we need that 4 days, because it's a day thinking about it, a day brainstorming it, and then 2 days actually working out, okay, what are the action steps to make it happen. And if you do that, it'll change your life and the team's life, because the clarity that comes out of that is awe-inspiring. So fully encourage you to make the time.
We do an annual plan, and you should see it. It's pretty intense at the moment, but it's definitely something that we do as a group. But because things do change so often, we've got to keep coming back to it.
Of course.
We've got to keep going. You know, and for me, you talk about that compass, that north. Like for me, it's about coming back to my why. What's my why?
Yes, exactly.
Why am I doing this? Why? And if it doesn't align with the why, then why are we doing it? You know.
Totally agree.
So that's got a big piece to it. So yeah.
Brilliant. A couple of other bits and pieces. Then, is there one guiding quote? And you mentioned the quote from Brendan Yells, which I think is a cracker for regional people. Is there one quote that, either your own quote or a quote that tends to guide and has been a bit of a guide for you over time that you want to share with?
Okay. So here's one, and this was said to me by my 10th grade homeschool, not homeschool, what are they? Your home group teacher, tutor teacher, and she said, to thine own self be true, like be true to yourself. And I think that's definitely one that I still think about now, that I've got to be true to myself. I've got to be realistic. I've got to be very honest with myself. That's probably one, but you know, I love Nike. Come on, just
do it. Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God.
Yes.
I guess, and another one like that of most like for myself that I do say a lot to people is that ideas are great, but they're worth nothing if you do nothing with it.
Yeah.
And it's so true. Like
Spot
so
on.
many people come to me, oh, I've got the best idea, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay. Well, let's see some action. So action trumps idea every day of the week.
Every day of the week.
I think that's probably another guiding principle that I'm more used for other people.
Yeah.
And try and live out through example myself. So
love that. Now, if you again, a lot of the listeners are avid readers and avid podcast listeners, for that matter. If you were to talk about the one book that you think everyone should read, and/or the one podcast that people should listen to, what's your suggestions around that?
Me? Okay, well, I've got it right here. Is this book?
Yep. What is it?
So it's, you probably can't see it. It's a podcast, right? So it's called, especially in the startup world, for people that are, either work for councils or business chambers or any support agencies like that, or people that want to get involved. It's called Startup Communities, and it's by Brad Feld, F-E-L-D. So that's probably like my favourite startup-y sort of book. But that's where I'm at. But as far as podcasts, like I listen to the Mark Boris show all the time. I think he's fantastic. But like the Harvard Business Review is great. I really enjoy it. But there's lots of different ones. I'm more will go, like I'm really into Elon Musk at the moment and learning about him, and so I'll just listen to all the podcasts that he's in. So I will, rather than podcast, I'll pick a topic and then try and get across different podcasts.
Love it. I do the same. I hadn't thought about it, but I do exactly that. Good call.
If you get one podcast, you're really only getting one viewpoint.
I agree.
I think you can, so podcasts are amazing though. Like the Rural Business Collective does one as well. That's Fleur Anderson, and she is a firecracker up in Queensland. So she's got some really great stories of people that have been there and done it as far as startups in regional and rural communities, and great stories. So that's another really good one to look out for.
Sensational. No, that's sensational. I'll tune in a couple of those myself because I'm an absolute podcast freak. I just love them. They're just a great way to soak in energy and avoid the bullshit. I mean, I'd stopped listening to the news 15 years ago because it's just all crap and it's all negative and it's all doom and gloom and fear and greed. Yeah, exactly. So I reckon podcasts are a brilliant way to do it. Sort of bringing it to a close then, Dianna, and very mindful of your time, very appreciative of the time we've had a chat. What's next on your plate? What are you doing, and how can people contact you to get involved?
So probably the first thing's AgriHack. So we do an agricultural-based hackathon. That's on the 1st and 2nd of March. Okay. But the big piece for this year for me, along with Pitch Fest, and more news will be coming out about that in the coming months.
Right.
Is 8.8. So as I mentioned before, this is a regional innovation and small business conference, which will be held in Wagga in August. And really hoping to have some great discussions around some more, challenging topics, but bringing the feeders of our communities, the chambers, the councils, together with the startups and the leaders, and having that sort of discussion around where our futures are regionally and how we can use startups to really drive commerce in our region. So really excited about that conference. But everything I do, I've built a website that has it all on it. So it's called regionalentrepreneur.com.au. So people can check it out there and keep up with what we're doing. And obviously we're on social and across all the different businesses that we've got going. But really just keen to see what else is going to rise for this year, and I'm sure there'll be more. I'm just sort of waiting in the wings to see what happens.
Yeah, well, that's a great way to let it happen, and I'm sure it's going to happen, Di. And again, I'm very appreciative of you giving me a bit of time to have a decent chat. Loved your energy right from the get-go when I had the pleasure of meeting you with the AusPost Regional Pitch Fest, which was I had a glow for a week after the exercise here in SA at McCrown Vale. It was just a sensational event and some great people and a really good energy level. So I love the time. Been great to have a chat. I'm a big supporter of what you're doing, and would love to continue to do that when and if the opportunity arises, Di. So keep on keeping on. You have a sensational time, and would love to have you back. on a regular basis just to check in and find out what's happening.
Sure, and thanks, Bushy. I think it's reciprocated, your energy too, and what you're trying to achieve for people out there is remarkable. So anytime, buddy, anytime.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, enjoy the rest of your day. We'll keep in touch and look forward to following your rise and rise.
Thanks, hon.
Good on you. Thanks, Di. Talk soon.
See ya.
Cheers. Bye. Well, freedom fighters, how good was that? To get a summary of all this investment gold in the show notes, just email me on hello@khgroup.com.au. That's HELLO@khgroup.com.au. Or check us out at www.bushymartin.com.au/get invested. I look forward to joining you next week for another episode of the Get Invested podcast. So thanks for listening, and as always, dream as if you'll live forever and live as if you'll die tomorrow.